Hello, my name is Maureen and I'm Director of Interfaith Scotland. And firstly, I'd want to say I'm really delighted that the Scottish Interfaith group on domestic abuse have asked me to say a few words today, particularly about faith communities and domestic abuse, but perhaps the wider issues as well. The first thing that I want to say that there is not a faith community scripture anywhere in the world that says that domestic violence is all right. Domestic violence is against the law, it's immoral, and there is not any faith that would agree with it. I also want to say that many faith communities have now got in place structures to help women when they experience domestic abuse, and that thank goodness people are beginning to really listen, that communities are really beginning to listen to women who are suffering such dreadful treatment in their own homes. And in Scotland there are great examples. Amina Muslims Women's Resource Centre, the Sikhs and Jog. Of course there's places like Women's Aid, there's Helping Hands, there's lots of Christian organisations. There are many organisations that women can turn to, but quite often they don't, or sometimes they don't. And today I phoned a friend, a dear friend, that I knew had suffered domestic violence, and I wanted to ask her why she didn't leave. You know, what was the reasons? And this dear friend of mine it was her childhood sweetheart. They'd met when she was 14, 15. They were married by the time she was 19. There was no hint of violence in their life for the first month. And then the violence started, and it got progressively worse, and it was always unprovoked. It was always extreme. Examples would be being woken up in the middle of the night and punched repeatedly, bathroom doors being broken down, and the door landing on my friend, and then the perpetrator jumping up and down in the door. And this was when she was trying to protect herself, keep herself safe in her own home. The outcome of this is that, you know, in her 60s now, she's only just beginning to come to terms with actually what happened to her for 18 months. It took her 18 months to leave. And it was a mixture of shame, of loving the person, of thinking this can't really be happening and maybe I can fix it, and not knowing what to do or where to go. And it was her family that she turned to, and her family that listened, believed her and protected her and looked after her. So it's so critical that when someone comes to you, whether it's someone from your faith tradition or not, if you don't have a faith tradition, that they're listened to and that you find ways for them to be protected and to be looked after and to be treated with the kindness, the love and the dignity that every human being deserves. On speaking to my friend, I realised actually she wasn't the only person in my life that I knew of who'd experienced domestic violence. I had a very close young relative who had also experienced 2 years of domestic violence. Someone from my faith tradition I knew who'd experienced domestic violence. In fact, when I really dug deep, I knew of at least half a dozen women who'd expected violence at the hands of their partners or their husbands, or those that they would have expected to have received love from. It's widespread, it's in all corners of society, and it will be in faith communities too. And they should never, ever, ever try to cover up the domestic violence that's within their communities, because that only makes things worse. And no amount of, oh dear, this will bring shame to our family or shame to our community or shame to our faith tradition, justifies not helping a victim of domestic abuse. There is no justification for domestic abuse. There is no justification for covering it up. And there is every justification in all the holy books for actually protecting and looking after women who have been abused. My own faith tradition as a Baha'i has issued many statements at the United Nations level to say that this is wrong, and that women who are equal to men and have a right for equal human dignity. So once again, thank you so much to the Scottish Interfaith group on domestic abuse. I think it's very important that this message gets out. So there's no place for domestic abuse in Scotland, in the UK, or on our planet. Thank you.